I don't know about you, but everybody we talk to, when we say, what's your disaster recovery? They say, oh, we'll just go back to paper.
Right.
They call this a worst case scenario. Not plan A.
Yeah, exactly.
You're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, where HIPAA and humor collide to make learning fun. Your delightful hosts are Donna Grindle and David Sims. Relax. HIPAA help is on the way.
Hello, this is Rich Hervig with Brightside IT out of Atlanta, Georgia, and you're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast.
Thank you for that intro. My name is David Sims of HIPAA for MSPs and Security First IT. And joining me, as always, is Donna Grindle of Carden. Good morning, Donna.
Good morning, David.
So today we're going to scare you.
And it's not even Halloween.
I know. Every episode is getting scarier for some reason. Today we're going to be talking about ransomware. Not like we've not talked about it a lot, but it is getting a lot worse. And my fear is people are hearing about it a lot. They're being exposed to it a lot. And so they're ignoring it. And so as it's getting worse, people are getting more complacent in looking at it.
Yes, that is the general concern. And that we've been hearing about it now for 3 years in healthcare, going back to 2016. And there's less and less concern because, that's commonplace now. Mm. Well, the problem is the commonplace thing is changing. It's getting more and more. It's getting scarier and scarier. Mm. Boo!
Yep. So we'll talk about that in today's episode. But before we dive into the meat of things, let's have some salad. Where are you going to be coming up?
So salad.
Get some appetizers going.
Yeah, I prefer it to be an appetizer, please. But the boot camp, obviously, March 20th, 21st, 22nd. This comes out right before then. And we also have one in May, 15th, 16th, and 17th. So you can still register for both of them as of right now. And so bring it on. We are at this moment pending approval for CEU by HCCA, the Healthcare Compliance Administration Compliance Certification Board.
All right.
Wow. I know, right? So we've applied to get CEUs from them. And, that pretty much will cover CEUs. If we can show we got them anywhere, that'll work usually. So that being said, also in April 7th through the 10th, it's going to be in Savannah, Georgia, with the Society of OMS Administrators National Conference, doing a workshop on using Hiccup in your office.
Yeah, so you have to go back to that episode to understand what that is.
Yeah, but it's the new guide that gives you 5 threats and 10 practices to implement to protect against those threats in healthcare. And it's really nice and good, but the name is so hard. And HIC something P, so Hiccup is what I've decided I'm going to call it. Period. It shall be so.
That'll work.
Yeah, there you go. So that's what we got going on right now. And we are getting interest about having a boot camp on the West Coast in the fall. If you are interested or you need more information, please send us an email, contact@helpmewithhipaa.com, because if we need to know that if we build it, you will come.
Absolutely. So you said again, I think this one comes out March the 8th, this episode?
I believe so, yes.
Is that correct? All right. So if you happen to be at the Robin Robbins boot camp and you're an IT guy and it's March the 8th, I'm there as well. So look me up. So I should have mentioned it last week that I'd be there for any of the IT folks that are going to be there, but I forgot. So today,
aren't you super famous, David? Doesn't everybody know you?
A lot of people do know me.
You need to wear the Help Me with HIPAA t-shirt with the "Stay Out of My Breeches" on the back.
Yeah, I'll do that. But I have the same problem you have, or should I say, I bet you have which is most of the time when I walk into a conference, people try to walk away because they're like, oh God, I know he's going to talk to me about something I'm not doing right.
I was like, wait a minute, why are they walking away?
Yeah. So I don't get that often, but it does happen from time to time if it's somebody that I've had a conversation with prior and, or they're a member of HIPAA for MSP. Sometimes they're like, yeah, I know. I told you I was going to do this like a year ago and I hadn't got to it. I'm sorry. Please don't say anything to me.
I know. That's like we're going to the Georgia MGMA conference and, everybody's coming over to see us. All of our clients is great, but most of them come over going, don't yell at me.
Exactly. So I get that.
Yeah.
I get that too.
Everybody's got something they haven't done. Don't worry about it.
Oh yeah. It's like, nah, you're good, dude.
Yeah.
At least just, at least you were reminded of it when you saw me and you felt bad about it.
I'm glad I inspired you to feel guilty.
Yeah. As long as you feel guilty, then I know that you're going to get around to it.
That's right. So come on by, David says.
Yeah.
Anyhow.
Yeah. Look me
let's
up.
Let's talk about some scary stuff.
Yeah. Ransomware getting scarier as if it needs to get any worse, but it is. And, it's a lot of the problems, just like with anything cybersecurity, is that it is always changing. It is always getting worse. It is evolving. People outside of this industry, I don't think they grasp that quite as much because they're not in there, but it changes. It changes constantly. The tools that are built to combat that and defend against it, they're always on the defense and trying to catch up with what's going on. And so we're going to look at some things that have come out recently and changed. And some of it's like, wow, how in the world are they able to do this? And the other side of things too is that a lot of these things that are problems is things that have been in place for years and people just don't know that there's a problem. And we'll cover one of those at least. But everything has security issues. It's just a matter of whether or not they have been found yet. So, and in that same vein, it's not in our notes here, but in that same vein, a software called WinRAR, WINRAR, which was a very popular compression zip file type software, been around for a long, long time. Just came out, I believe, yesterday with an article that said there is a security flaw in the software that's been there for 19 years that they finally fixed.
They just found
it and fixed it. So,
and it wasn't in their software. It was in the software of another software provider that they had embedded into their software. So it's technically going 2 levels deep.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. So, there again, this is perfect warning to say for those people who say, I've done this and I've checked the box and I'm not, I'll look at it again in another year or whatever. Everything you have has security flaws and security issues. That's why you have to keep constantly on top of things and looking at things to find out, did they find something new and how do I fix it? It's the same reason, some of this MSP stuff that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, same thing, nobody was paying attention to it because it wasn't an issue. Now all of a sudden it's a huge deal.
Well, and speaking of that, under the That's What We Said title, we just talked about the Cottage Health settlement and the $3 million settlement, which we pointed out was 3 million reasons you should be auditing IT. And what happens this week, but there's an announcement by the University of Washington Medical Center about a data breach, and this one affected 974,000 people.
I think that's reportable, isn't it?
You think? And guess what caused it, David? Go ahead. Guess what caused this breach?
It'd have to be if I had to pick of the 10,000 things it could be, it would be a misconfiguration of a database open to a web server to the public internet. That would be what I would pick.
That sounds exactly like what I wrote in our notes. That's amazing.
I know. I can read.
So yeah, it was another IT human error. That the article that's talking about the details of it and what the university has released as far as how it happened, and then of course the they ask, they're always asking a security expert how, what you could do. And they say, well, you really should have IT doing checklists for security. And I think that's what we've said over and over and over. But still, people act like what we're doing is unreasonable. And we are trying to say they don't do their job and all these other things. No, I'm trying to prove you did do your job. So, that's what we said. That's all I'm saying.
Indeed. We did say that.
We said it over and over and over. So it's just another, get IT to do the reports and the documentation and the checklist and have them listen to this if they're not listening to you.
Yeah, that's true. That brings us to something we've talked about a lot, which is password management. And, we make no bones about what we use, even though there are other ones out there. But we use LastPass. Been using LastPass for a very, very long time. There are other password managers out there. Some are just as good or good. Some are not so good. But, kind of along the same lines of what we opened with, sometimes there are still problems that are found.
Yes. And also coming out in the news this week, several password managers use a method that allowed things to leave crumbs in memory, which is a very complicated thing that was going on. But the bottom line is, if someone had access to your machine and you hadn't shut everything down yet, they could still potentially pull passwords out of your memory. But there's a long list of but this that they'd have to do.
Yeah, it's not easy, and I think they have to have physical access to the machine.
Yeah, not just remote access, but physical access, so that they could do some of this stuff. But of course, we know that there's people that will read nothing but the headline.
Yeah,
password manager leave crumbs in memory. And then they won't read the details. And one of the most impressive things in the details is how LastPass responded to it and had a statement before any of the other password managers even knew what they were doing. Not only did they have a statement about what they were doing, it was about what they've done.
Right.
And that they had already solved the problem. All you had to do was make sure you're on the current release.
Mm-hmm.
Which, of course, we were.
Of course.
Yes. So no one's perfect. And rather than worrying about putting a spin on things like this when it happens, they don't even worry about what the marketing message is. They worry about solving the problem and giving you a very transparent message as soon as possible. That's why we like them.
Yeah, they've done this in the past. They're very quick to respond and very quick to address the issue, and they don't cover anything up. So I feel comfortable using them. Every time we talk about LastPass, especially in these boot camps, there's always somebody says, well, what if LastPass get hacked, or what if, if somebody gets into that account or whatever. So there's always concern about it. However, in this day and time, how are you managing your passwords? Because if you're doing passwords properly and you have a password for every single thing you're going to that changes on a schedule, there's no way you can keep up with them unless you have some type of password manager. And I don't mean the little black book that you're writing everything down in.
That says password keeper on the front.
Yes. Oh Lord, I've seen those for sale. Drive me crazy. But LastPass is great. Like I said, there are other ones out there, but the point is, find you one that works for you and secure it properly. And it does a great job of helping you manage your passwords.
Well then, password managers, yes, there are problems. They're not perfect, but what matters is that you can count on LastPass to fix it.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. And then that brings us to kind of the headline of the topic for the day, which is the ransomware is getting a lot scarier.
Yeah, there's reasons to be scared.
Yep. So tell us about the what is it? Ryuk.
I had to go to the web to learn how to. And this comes from a Japanese anime story called Death Note. And-
That's funny because one of my kids actually has one of those.
Yeah.
But the first time, it's short story. But when I first saw the book, I mean, it's on the front of it, it's like Death Note, and I'm like, oh dear God, please don't tell me I'm going to open this thing up and find like a list of names. It scared the mess out of me when I stumbled across it in their room back a few years ago.
Because you knew your name be at the top.
Yeah.
Because you're the dad. I'm sure it's when you're taking a car away or something.
Yeah.
But so this Ryuk ransomware is really spreading, and there was some speculation that it was spreading due to North Korean nation state attacks. Turns out not so much. That's not what's happening. But what is going on is the more than one criminal gang appears to be using it. That's part of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And they are targeting businesses with this stuff. And it has a higher ransom price than a lot of the ones that have been here. So they target the business and demand a sky-high ransom. And because of that, they are, quote, raking in Bitcoins. So apparently in January, they had 52 transactions totaling $3.7 million.
Wow.
Yes, not 3.7 million Bitcoins, $3.7 million worth of Bitcoins. 52 transactions. So do some math right there.
Mhm.
People are paying a lot of money. And what's even worse is apparently they totally suck at writing their decryptor program. Because according to the article on it that was, really taking you through how this thing worked, it said that the decryptor apparently only works 60% of the time. And I love compared to the industry average of 95%. There is a ransomware industry average.
Ransomware decryptor industry average. That's funny.
But 60% of the time. So that means you're paying more money and you got a 40% chance that it won't even work if you pay. So you're better off not paying.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've said that over and over. And, this whole concept of people are doing different things and the ransomware is taking different approaches and those kind of things. So you end up with people not realizing until it's too late that, hey, we let our guard down. And that's another article about ransomware going on. The article is Ransomware in 2019 and Beyond. Don't get complacent.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is one of the things that I worry about the most. I know it's something that you worry about a great deal. We talk about it often. And you get complacent with security.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's like nothing happened. I don't have to lock the car door.
Yeah. I mean, we hear it sometimes, especially if we have clients that's been around a while. They'll, you go back and you have a meeting with them and they're like, I really don't understand why I'm paying for this security thing over here because we just hadn't had anything. I'm like, that's because you're paying for the security thing.
That's right. The reason you don't have things is because, it's kind of like, you know what? I'm not going to maintain the moat or the castle wall anymore, because they've been working so well.
Yeah.
So when a hole falls through or the water runs out, no worries. Somebody can shoot a cannonball straight through that crumbling wall. No problem.
Mm-hmm.
Because we haven't had any problems in a long time.
Yep.
And that's what was really interesting in the report, the article that pointed out this complacency issue, because, WannaCry and NotPetya really had everybody talking about it when that happened. What was that? 2017? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
May 2017? Because I just remember WannaCry, we were in the middle of a boot camp. And everybody's getting messages about this stuff happening. Well, that was, fortunately, WannaCry got stopped. And, they're actually both still running around, though. People are still being infected by them, which is, they know that WannaCry, especially, you could prevent it if you had your Windows updates.
Right.
So, but the point was in this article about complacency, and here's what they said. They said a recent report from Singapore-based Cyber Risk Management Project found healthcare would be one of the worst affected industries by a theoretical global ransomware attack, with losses approaching $25 billion.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, we're talking about a global attack, which we saw already. We know it can happen.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody wants more interconnectivity between healthcare. We constantly having that discussion, but you got to worry about the security because of this. And worldwide, so we're not just talking about in Singapore. It is probably, when you look at that $25 billion, I would wager a giant chunk of it would come from the United States.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it would. There's, there's all kind of havoc that would wreak around, those systems going down, especially in medical. I mean, you got devices that are, people are hooked to that it would be affected.
Yeah. And you hit those things and you render it useless, because ransomware can do that.
Yeah.
And I love one of the quotes in this thing. It talked about the impacts of facilities' ability to care for patients and here's the quote, in worst case scenarios, calls for reverting back to paper.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about you, but everybody we talk to, when we say, what's your disaster recovery? They say, we'll just go back to paper.
Right.
They call this a worst case scenario, not plan A.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so most people consider that plan A, and what they're pointing out is, really and truly, that shouldn't be plan A, but it is. And that's not a battle I'm ready to fight. I don't know about you.
No.
But redundancy and all that kind of stuff, we can't get them to secure what they have. They're not going to have, other layers. But the sheer volume of data and traffic running through the healthcare industry only makes it faster for things to spread. So, financial organizations have all of these little stopgap measures in them now.
Mm-hmm.
And, they have all kinds of ways to shut down those connections and make those things just, because they've got that redundancy. They've got all those things, because Lord knows we can't have the money stop flowing. But if your blood quits flowing, you're good to go.
Yeah.
Because it's a little too pricey for that security system.
Yeah, but it's not in the in the ultimate scheme of things. I had a small business was talking to the other day, our small practice, and he made a comment that, I understand that we have to do all this additional security. It's just the nature of the business we're in, and I'm like, no, it's not the nature of the business you're in. It's the nature of the world you live in.
You're absolutely right. I mean, it's where we live. It's not. I mean, there are not many businesses that don't rely on technology to run.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care what it is. You take any business and you take away all of its ability to use technology. And you ask any business owner, tomorrow, none of your technology works. None of it. How do you function?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's not going to work for 2 weeks. How do you function? And no, there's no one you can yell at to make that faster. And that's a real possibility.
Yeah. I mean, didn't we have a story last week about a company that had some type of attack and they deleted a bunch of data? The company's like, I don't know if we're going to ever come back from this.
Yeah. That was the email server company.
Yeah.
And it's somebody that provided email services.
Mm-hmm.
And they did have backups.
Right.
And they're trying, but they're like, decades worth of data is gone. And that one's its own little mess, which was also part of what we talked about last week was, where you read about an MSP being attacked.
Yes.
And on a Reddit, Reddit thread.
Yep.
But, everybody was talking about that, locking customers out of the system. And that particular one, I think it was spreading the Grand Crab version.
Mm-hmm.
But, this stuff is becoming quite big news because they see it as the absolute golden egg because you get access to so many clients with one MSP.
Oh yeah. I mean, why attack, one client when you can attack somebody who's got a bunch of clients?
Yeah. So they are targeting MSPs. It's not an accident. They're targeting MSPs on purpose. And APT10 is a threat group that apparently is part of the Chinese, I don't know, CIA, whatever you want to call them, KGB. Oh, don't go down that path. I'm a child of the 80s. I can't help it.
Yeah.
So
what is it now? It's not that. It's F something. I don't know.
Yeah. Really. But ever since the movie Jumpin' Jack Flash, I can't stop seeing Whoopi Goldberg go, KGB! KGB! That movie is great. If you haven't seen it lately, go just watch it again. I'm a little black woman in a little silver box, in a big silver box. Okay. Anyway, back to the story. But they're targeting specifically MSPs. And it is a broad, as they quote in an article, broad cyber espionage operation called Cloud Hopper. So before, they were targeting banking, manufacturing, consumer electronics, and, quote, numerous other sectors by attacking their MSPs. Well, do you think healthcare is going to be left out? I mean, come on.
Mm-mm.
You can't leave them out. There's too much data. It is the most valuable data of the valuable data when you get past nation state secrets, military kind of things. But it's not new. I mean, this has been going on a while.
Yeah. And then all they have to do is look at an MSP's website and see if they're focusing on healthcare. Or just mention healthcare, which is sometimes even worse because a lot of these people who mention they do healthcare don't know anything about HIPAA or security.
Yeah. They think you just run some programs and you're good to go.
Yeah.
But so the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, because we got to have big ones, but it's an office within Homeland Security, blah blah blah, and they did back in October published a threat bulletin, Advanced Persistent Threat Activity Exploiting Managed Service Providers. That was in October. But even in April 2017, that's when they noticed something happening. And it talked about intrusions affecting multiple victims across multiple sectors. And then they figured out they're going through the MSPs. And they figured out later that it was apparently the Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
So they send out this alert to providers that says, to IT providers, so IT providers including MSPs, but it says, these threat actors are actively exploiting trust relationships between information technology service providers, such as managed service providers and cloud service providers, and their customers. So today, they're actually doing, as we record this today, they had, like at 1 o'clock today on the 22nd, they're doing a briefing on this problemo. And they have published, because they've done a few of these, and they published the slide deck of this awareness briefing. And so, that's the shortcut I took. But the slide deck, it had some good stuff in it. I like the first quote there is, you can outsource your operations, but you cannot outsource your risk.
Yeah, to a degree.
Yeah. I mean, the risk, all you're doing is outsourcing your protections. Mm-hmm. The risk is still there.
Right.
The risk didn't transfer to somebody else. The risk, you are addressing it by having someone else provide those protections and mitigate the risk. But the risk is still there.
Yeah, so you're actually outsourcing the risk management.
Right. You make this not so painful. You hired bodyguards. That's what MSPs are, is bodyguards for your network.
There you go.
Yeah. So, they can still be, hit, and you always see that in the movies, right? You got a bodyguard, and
Mhm.
there's always the ninja team coming in and taking them out one at a time.
Yeah.
So,
But you can, some of these risks, you don't have to even try to outsource or manage. Sometimes you can just remove them altogether. And we've had many environments we went in, and it's like, hey, did you know? Well, first of all, it usually starts like this. We have a cloud EHR platform, so we don't have any patient information on any machine.
nothing.
Yeah. Which I always
Not allowed.
I always laugh. Then we find out there is patient information on every machine. But it's, it can often be sometimes things that can just be removed. Like, let's just remove it from this machine, because you don't need to keep all these PDF scans that you've been doing over the past 2 years that have all this patient information in there. You've already scanned it, used it. You don't need them here. So you remove it. So by doing that, you can sometimes remove certain risks, but you have to go in and actually do a risk assessment so that you can figure out where this stuff is.
Well, and that's the part of the process that often is done wrong. Is you really need to assess what you have and where you have it, and how does it move around, and how does it come in, and how does it go out, and that's part of the process. And just scanning some computers ain't going to give you all that.
Mm-mm.
So that was a pretty good quote. And then there's another one that's, it's a great point, but it's also terrifying. But then again, we've been saying data is the most valuable resource for years now. The point they make in the slide deck is cyber is the top threat to national security.
Oh, yeah, I believe it.
Let that just sit for a minute.
The other piece of this is that of all the other things that are top threats, this is one of the ones where all the way down to the individual level, it requires some type of, what's the word I want to look for? You have to pay attention to it, even at the individual level. It can't be
awareness.
Great. But you can't say, well, okay, great, this is a national security issue. I hope somebody figures this out.
I know, right?
mean, everybody, if you're sitting at a computer, if you're using a smartphone, which is not a smartphone, any of those things, you are part of this threat landscape. And so you're either, helping the problem or you're fighting the problem.
Yeah, you're either part of the problem or you're part of the, solution.
Correct.
And it literally is that way. Or you're off the grid. There is that third thing.
Yeah.
You're completely off the grid.
In that case, you're not listening to us now anyway.
I know, right? You don't count, right? We're not including you in our list of things that need to be dealt with. So, the big issue, and it's just, like you said, is that people have to realize and understand what's going on, and in their key takeaways about the threat. And this slide deck, we're going to have links to it and stuff. There's some other information in there about mitigation and all of this. But understanding the threat, knowing you have a problem is the first step to fixing it, right?
Yep.
And we're talking about cyber being the biggest threat to national security, yet every week we're talking about why are people not listening to us? But their three takeaways about the threat were, number one, this is a serious actor with resources, and they require a firm resolve by the defenders.
Mm-hmm.
And who are the defenders?
Me.
Each and every one of us. You're right. The me.
Yep.
So the actor, number two, the actor sweeps up collateral targets of opportunity in addition to their primary targets of interest.
Mm-hmm.
So you could just be collateral damage. All of I don't have anything they want. They wouldn't be looking at me. It's not about that. They want everything. There's a value to everything, whether it's using your devices as part of a botnet or, stealing stuff off of it. It doesn't matter. You have value. We all matter.
You're a valuable person on the internet.
Number three, this actor lives off the land, and they may use commonplace tools found already in your network environments. Mm-hmm. So they just get in. They don't come in and put their stuff in. once they get in, they use what's already there and then turn them against you.
Mm-hmm.
Ow. So they truly are, like the KGB, the spies, the Americans, where they have that show, and then Project Blue Book, and all of these talk about how, they infiltrated so it felt like they were one of you, but the call was coming from inside the house. So they are using tools that are already there to avoid detection. Because one of the things, David, this thing that you're testing, and you're like, one of the things it looks for is anomalies.
Yeah.
And if they can get in and then not make themselves noticeable to those kind of tools, which are the proactive tools.
Right.
The proactive tools are the ones that are looking for strange behavior. So they just try to blend in with the rest, They go to the Steelers game and wear a Steelers jersey, but they are, a very serious threat. And in an article on January the 2nd on Krebs on Security, which we follow a lot, they reported that Data Resolution is a company that is a hosting provider in California. And the quote was, struggling to bring its systems back online after suffering a ransomware infestation on Christmas Eve.
The worst time, because you got, nobody's there. You got to call everybody in.
Yeah. So, it's a perfect time to do it. And, all of the people that said, well, we don't have to worry about that because everything's in a data center.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Yep.
There you go. If your data center is maybe one of the big ones, the big ones invest a boatload of money in securing their stuff. But you get the smaller ones, which are much more affordable. They don't have the resources to invest in security. And just like, they look for a good deal, just like you look for a good deal and you found them.
Mm-hmm.
So it appears that they were able to, pull the plug, but several of their clients were hit with reuk. And, that looked scary. So kind of keeping an eye on it. And then this week we got an email from Chris Dix, our buddy down in Jacksonville.
Yep. Been to the boot camp too.
That's right. And he sent us some information because he has filed a complaint on behalf of one of his clients against Data Resolution, the cloud hosting provider, because unfortunately, his client is the one that got hit with the ransomware attack at Data Resolution. So here they are out in California with a data center, and you think you're good to go, having your business in Jacksonville, all the data stored in California, and turns out not so much. So his email to us, I included it here, and it's public record now because he did file a case. And so here's Chris's email to us. If it's okay, I shall just read it.
We'll just read it and we'll ask for permission later.
I know, right? Sorry, Chris. Please don't sue us. So attached is a complaint filed recently in my neck of the woods, a Jacksonville-based company called First Coast Security Services. And they're security guards. So we're not talking healthcare. Whose cloud-based data hosting vendor, Data Resolution LLC, suffered a ransomware attack over the Christmas holidays. So lines right up with what we'd already read back on January the 2nd. Well, I didn't read it because that's when I had my surgery and I was well doped up at that point. But I did read it once I got, alert. But according to the complaint that he has filed, all of First Coast Security's customer information was encrypted. And here's the bad part. Everybody, it's encrypted. You either pay the rent, restore the something. So they had outsourced that operation trying to protect themselves by using Data Resolution. And turns out Data Resolution has not yet paid the ransom or otherwise decrypted their data.
Mm.
So, this came this week. Now, it happened on Christmas Eve.
Right.
Christmas Eve to this week. So you do the math about how long. Oh, yeah, I use a data center. I don't have to worry.
Right. Apparently you do.
Yeah. I mean, come on. They don't have access to their data. What would you do? And he said, continuing Chris's email, First Coast is alleging damages in excess of $300,000.
Yeah, and that's just one client.
Yeah, that's their security guards. So, it's not like healthcare data because you're looking at, by, New Year's Eve or just after New Year's, they would have blown through $300,000. So he continues by saying, I think the data resolution incident, which serves approximately 30,000 businesses worldwide, is different than the one you mentioned in episode 191 of your podcast, affecting 80 clients, because, that was, I think, when we were talking about the MSP.
Mm-hmm.
But this is just another example that reinforces all of the things that you both preach on your podcast week in and week out. Risk analysis, incident response, and the constantly changing landscape of cybersecurity threats. You are such a good listener, Chris.
Right.
We appreciate that.
He gets it.
And then he drank the Kool-Aid. And he ends with, thanks for continuing to produce such a fantastic podcast. Well, thank you, Chris. We do this for you.
It's all for you.
And by the way, Chris is an attorney with Smith, Halsey, and Busey, and a HIPAA boot camp alum, as David mentioned. And there's a link to Chris's information. He's a loyal listener, and he sends us some great stuff.
Yeah.
It's either right along with what we're talking about or something really juicy like this. Either way, greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much, Chris, because that makes it very, very clear to our listeners just how bad it can be. That his client, here we are in March, by the time this comes out, but at this point it's February 22nd, and he's had to file this because they still don't have access to their data since December.
That's rough.
And they counted on them, for backups and everything.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure they did. Yep. I appreciate that, Chris. He's an attorney, but, I don't say this about very many attorneys, but he's also a great guy.
I know. I've been sitting here playing with the little fidget spinner that he gives us. I do it every Friday while we're talking.
Oh, Lord.
I do it a lot more than that. The fidgeting is a thing. So, but anyway, thanks for that too, Chris. But do keep us up to date on anything that you can share. Clearly this is public record, so, I kind of felt like it was okay. But what's important is for people to understand you can't assume my IT has it. They're an MSP. They'll take care of it, and I don't have to ask them any questions, and they're not going to be the ones to infect me. And MSP providers, you can't assume that you're not going to infect your clients. That, that's not going to happen to me. That's that complacency that we worry about the most.
Yeah, because
you should assume it's going to happen.
I mean, the IT providers can get complacent just like anybody else. And that's another reason why you have to ask questions and get documentation. It can absolutely happen. Or you could be, your policy in your IT business may be that we're going to do all these things right, but are your technicians following the policy? Or have they got complacent?
Because nobody's looking.
Right.
Yeah.
If
you're looking, things aren't a cooking.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely one of those things where the follow-up, the documentation, and vigilance, as they said clearly, firm resolve by the defenders, because it's not going to matter. Once you're found, it's over.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Hell begins.
Scary. So, Anyway, great episode. That is.
You do say so yourself.
I thought it was great. All right. So, folks, remember to follow us and share us out on your favorite social media site. Rate us on our podcasting app. We need your help to spread the word. Don't forget about the boot camp. It's like almost too late to get into March, so you better hurry. Go to thehippabootcamp.com to learn more and to get your tickets. So as always, remember, for Donna and myself, the HIPAA is not about compliance. It's about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.